enemy. Think that it was meant to be. Living in a time where disease is on every screen. I won't let them fester me. I know most are festering negativity.
His dad owned like a car wash spot, and he had a Tesla. He asked me to move the Tesla. I'm like, all right, cool. So I get on there. I'm trying to figure the fucking car out in the first place. I'm like, all right, how is it on? Is it off? I can't tell. So I don't remember what I did, but I remember pressing the accelerator, and I just lunged forward. It's like, oh, it's on.
Yeah, you know when it's on because it has straight power. It is it's one of the funnest cars. I have to honestly say I learned how to fart with my car before I learned how to drive it. The kids love that feature too. Yeah, it's
that's hilarious, cool. Man. That's a nice car, man. That's what, you know what, I want to get the SUV, because I know they got the regular 5-seater, and then they got the one with the third row, right?
Right.
So I mean, you got what? How many kids you have?
I have 6 kids, man.
I got 2 kids, and I think I'm busy.
Yeah, no, they keep me on my toes all the time. The funny thing is, for that Christmas that my wife got me the Tesla, yeah, I got her a Yukon XL, and yeah, so this is great. This is my treat, as you see. I get in here when I need some dad time away. Because I have 2 toddlers, and it used to be, well, if dad needs to go poop, you leave him alone. And the older kids know that, but the toddlers, they don't care. They'll climb all over you while you're on the toilet. So I had to upgrade to the Tesla.
That's awesome, man. Well, you know, I just started recording right away because I felt like this was a great conversation right off the back, which is awesome. So before we continue, I want to introduce you, Mike Perez. I've been with you on social media for some time. I think you got one of the coolest sounding brands when it comes to the gun industry. Like, or anyone tells me we kick brass, every time I think about it, I'm like, that's dope, right? So, and I say, you know, the way I met you was we were on a gun group. I forget which one in particular. But
probably the Raider blackout discussion, or
no, I think it was another one, because what happened was, from what you call it, there was something that happened with a veteran where somebody wanted to gift them a custom build or some sort. I don't recall too many details. But you came in and you offered to do something, you know, that was very generous. I'm like, man, this is the type of guy I would love to have on my feet, just because, you know, people like that are hard to come across, and when you do, it's like you really want to have those people around, right? So ever since this fall, I've been seeing your journey of what you've posted, and I'm like, man, this is inspiring, because here's a man who's clearly faced some challenges, but he has overcome so much and is doing so much more. I see this as a perfect fit to be able to help the listeners who are looking to pursue their dreams, right? I mean, you just got your Tesla, which is cool, because I remember you stated being your dream car. I'm like, he's making it happen. That's great. You know, that's wonderful, man. So with that being said, things are coming on, dude. Really, really thanks. I've been looking forward to this like crazy.
Thank you for having me on, and I'm glad you mentioned the whole thing. You've been following me on social media, and I think it's kind of deceptive. Because all you see most of the time, 99% of the times, and I'm sure if you follow my Facebook page, you'll see that there are some downsides, but
of course,
you know, on the surface, I mean, you're going to just see the tip of the iceberg. For most successful people, it's all the accomplishments and accolades that they're proud of. But behind the scenes, the stress is insane. And, you know, I really want to hit on that too today. When you gave me the opportunity to come on board here, I wanted to discuss that. I think I've come out with the right formula when it comes to being successful with any business.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, because to clarify, it's not just We Kick Brass. You also got We Kick Grass, which I was like, yo, that's perfect, right?
Yeah, I'm actually coming out with a couple other companies too. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've had 12 businesses in my life since I started when I was 17. Now 34 years old. So half my life I've been spending, you know, on running businesses, and I should say failing businesses. But that's one of the biggest things for people to understand, is that to be successful, you have to understand that failure is just going to happen. You know, you are going to fail. You are going to make mistakes, and don't be afraid to do that. You know, like I've been homeless. My adult life, I was 17 years old. My mother was like, you know what, you're an adult now. She was the VP of Great Florida Bank, and she's like, you know what, you have 2 options. You're done with school, so you can come work at the bank and you know, learn to take it over, or you can start your own life. And I decided I was going to start my own life. She taught me a very important lesson when I was 15 years old and took away a Toyota Supra from me.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. You have a Toyota Supra, 15 years old?
I had a 97
Oh
Gen
shit.
3. It was amazing. So I turned 15 years old, and my mom, we did. I had a very interesting life. We started off very, very poor, and I think early on, my mother installed the work ethic that I have today. But she
Yeah.
continued to work and strive, and never accepted failure, because failure would have been, we were out on the street, and that was just unacceptable. Failure was never an
Yeah.
option. And we ended up getting, through her perseverance, and that's one of the main things, and that's what I want to hit on today. Through her perseverance, we ended up having a very good life. She ended up becoming the VP of Great Florida Bank,
Oh wow.
making very, very good money. And when I turned 15, I got my restricted license, and she's like, well, you're 15, and you get to have a car now, and you get to start driving. What do you want? And I was like, I want a Toyota Supra. And back at this time, this is when Fast and the Furious was like a big thing. The first or
Yeah.
second one had come out, and I always wanted the 2JZ engine. And so she got it for me the next day. I think she bought it for like $71,000 or something absurd. And I
Oh
think
wow.
it's pretty important to hear that, because I had that car for all of a week. And so I lived
So
in Miami.
oh my god, that reminds me like the commercial when they attach the dollar at the hook. It's like, oh, you almost got the dollar.
Oh, I,
You
I
know,
had it. I had it though. So it was very interesting, Ronnie. What I
just
would
held the
do,
dollar.
and
Oh,
I don't
dude.
condone this, obviously, but this is me being young, dumb, and with a car that was pushing like 700 behind the wheels. I was racing it every day, but I would do two bets. So I'd bet whoever wanted to race me $100, and then I'd have someone in my passenger seat, and I'd bet them $100 if they can grab the $100 on the dash. If you could get that $100 after I hit first gear, you can have it. But if you can't touch it, then you'd pay me. I never paid out $100. That car would just send you straight to your seats. But one day, one of my mom's employees saw me driving, and she knew it was my car. It was very distinct. And she told my mom, and I was a very, very good kid in school. I never did anything bad, and in my mom's eyes, I was like the perfect child. So she like jokingly confronted me about it after work one day. She's like, "Hey, Anna said that she saw you racing your car," and I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
you gave me one of the fastest cars in the world. What do you
How
think
do
I'm
you
gonna
not
do?"
want to race a Supra?
So she was like, and this was like a week after having the car. Literally, I only had it for about a week, and she's like, "Take me for a spin." And I was like, all right, cool. And she's like, I want you to take this thing fast. And I was like, all right, let's get on the turnpike. By the time I was in like fifth gear, we were doing like 165, and she started screaming. She was like, stop! Just, no. She sold the car the next day for like $31,000. You just got rid of it.
Oh my god, man! If I was in your shoes, I probably just drove slow on purpose. Like,
Uh,
he's not too bad.
well, Supers are
Wow.
wide, they're heavy. So she was
Yeah.
like, there's no way this thing is fast. And I mean, she was completely wrong, but but it taught me one of the most important lessons of my life, and
Yeah.
that is, if you didn't work for it, if you didn't bleed for it, and you didn't sweat for it, you didn't own it, you didn't earn it, and it's never yours.
Mm.
Now
That's good. That's powerful.
that was 15-year-old me getting the first real taste of life. And fast forward to 17, I remember my mom taking away that Supra, and I can only imagine, being the VP of Great Florida Bank 20, 30 years
Yeah.
down the road, what would she have said? Like, you wouldn't have had this career if it wasn't for me. You wouldn't have earned it or anything. So I couldn't have that looming over my head.
Hmm.
So I decided, you know what? Thanks for the opportunity, Mom, but I'm gonna start my own life. And she said, okay, I'm gonna give you $20. And she gave me $20, and she gave me a 97 Ford Explorer. And she said, good luck. I'll see you in a couple weeks. And she goes, you're no
Wow.
longer welcome back in my home until you decide you're gonna come work for me.
Oh wow.
It took me 11 years to see my mom again. But
Well, okay, so wait, hold on. So she really meant it. You did not see her for 11 years.
I did not see her for 11 years. And it was
Wow.
mainly because she's very prideful, and I'm very prideful. And I knew that I had to prove her. I have to prove that I was worthy of starting my own life. And
Dude, wow. Let me ask you something, man, because like, you know, when you hear this, it's like, man, that's rough, and you know, but in reality, it's like, well, look where Mike is at now. You know, those were great lessons, right? It's like, and I might get this all wrong, but I think about like when birds are in the nest, you got to kind of just toss them out there, figure it out.
100%.
You know, and it
100%.
sucks. Yeah, and I got 2 kids, right? And I tell my wife, and they're only 2 years old. And I told my wife, it's like, look, I want my kids to be as independent as possible. And there's going to be some times that things are going to seem, they're going to seem real rough. They're going to seem like, what, like, you know, they're so young. But hey, the world is not going to forgive. The world's not going to be
fair.
easy. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to be fair. So if I give them that advantage now, when they get older, they're going to be able to conquer those things they're facing because they already know to face adversity.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what it seems like the situation you're in. So it's like, wow, that's rough. But man, at the same time, well, look at yourself now. You got the dream cars. You know, you've been able to do so much. I mean, dude.
I mean, so it took me 11 years, and I had this mentality every day of like, she's watching me, she's gonna see what I'm gonna do, and obviously
Yeah.
she wasn't. But it took me, I believe, I was 27 years old. It was either 27 or 28. My son was 2 years old when I brought him to her. But I called her up one day, and I said, I want to tell you something, Mom. And she's like, what do you want, Michael? And I said, just want to tell you I love you. You know, you made me every bit of the man I am today. And although you weren't there for any of them, all my major accomplishments were because of you. And we had a very, very, very good relationship after that. And she met my son, and it was real good. I'm getting a little emotional because
no, dude, you got me wanting to get emotional too, man. Because like, you know, man, being a parent, like again, my kids are only 2 years old. They're about to turn 3 actually in a couple of weeks.
Nice.
You know, so there's still so much to learn and so much to figure out, right? But as a new dad, I hear your words, right, and I think about them like, wow, you know, the feeling one must have hearing your kids call back, even despite whatever adversities or challenges there were in a relationship, to be able to hear, you know what, thank you for doing what you did, because it made me the person I am, right? And I even think of my situations too, like, you know, came from very bad places, but I'm thankful because if I wouldn't have faced some of the things I had faced, I would not become the person I am. You know, so I mean, you say you're getting emotional. I'm like, man, I feel that too, bro.
Yeah, man.
You're crying on here on camera, man.
So like kids, I don't think, like, I never understood the sacrifice that my mother was making every day.
Yeah.
You know, I remember growing up and wondering, like, why does my mom want to spend time with me? And she was always grinding, you know. Even when she was making good money, she was working day in, day out. She ended up taking, I don't know if you know much about Miami Heat, but she was the one that signed their entire team to bank with Great Florida Bank, and then she got the sponsorship. Wow. Yeah, so in the Miami Airlines Arena, it was all Great Florida Bank, like all the banners and stuff, and that was her. And
so, are you originally from Florida?
Born and raised in a little country down south called Miami.
Hey, it's funny because I still got 305 on me right here.
Ah, there you go. Yeah, I was born and raised down in Kendall. And
like, hey, there we go. See, yeah. I lived in Kendall. Yeah, I wasn't born in Miami. I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but I was raised in Miami.
Nice.
I miss that city, man. It's crazy now, but I still miss it.
I was there for 23 years of my life, and Miami is tough. Miami is going to either make you or break you. 100%. But I didn't realize how unhappy I was until I moved up to where I'm at now. Because in Miami, I mean, I was 17 when I started on my own, and I started JP Miami Industries, which was a t-shirt printing and embroidery company. And I actually did this. It was actually an incredible thing. It was happenstance. I just showed up at a convenience store one day, and the manager was like, oh, we need to go ahead and order new uniforms for shirts. And so I was like, oh, are you taking quotes? Because I would be more than happy to take a quote. And they were like, oh, yeah, absolutely. We need such and such shirts. So I was like, all right, cool. Writing it down like I knew something about something, right? But I knew I had to hustle because I was 2 months on the street already, living out of my car, out of my truck, the 97 Explorer. And so I went back. I called up a t-shirt printing shop, and I was like, "Hey, how much for this color, shirt with this much in, color size or whatever?" And they quoted me, and I went back to the store manager, who I told, "Oh, I'll be back in a week." Well, I went back the next day, and I was like, "Here you go. Here's your quote. This is your price." And basically, I added $1 onto it, and they're like, "That's awesome. Done deal." And so I got my first deal, and it wasn't a legitimate one. I wasn't a business at the time or anything, but I was so excited. I made like $12 net profit. It was like 12 shirts.
Dude, you did like a drop shipping method kind of deal there, right?
I mean, I didn't have to do
That's
anything. I was
crazy.
the middleman. So I was like, this is great. Like, you give me money in my hand, I give it to this guy over here, I keep the extra, and now I get to have a McDouble. So, like,
Yeah.
and that's the thing, man. McDonald's used to be my jam. I still, to this day, one of my favorite meals, as terrible as it sounds, is a McDouble and a McChicken. Um, and the reason being is they were only, huh?
I said I'll fight McDonald's because they look. I don't eat McDonald's because all the stuff on there. But man, if I had a Mac chicken with cheese on in front of me, it's a fight.
Well, the thing for me was, man, when I had $20, my mom gave me that $20. I knew that if I spent that money, that's it. Like, it's not coming back. I had no job.
Yeah.
No one would legally hire me at the time. I was only 17. So my first hustle was actually getting water. So I used that $20 to buy a $3.99 pack of water from Publix, and which is a local store here. And then I went out on the side of the street and I started selling it right off of the turnpike, right on Kendall, which was a very, very busy drive. And people knew I was homeless, but they knew that they were wanting to give me money for those bottles of water because I wasn't asking. I wasn't asking for a handout.
You
And
were selling, yeah.
I was selling it, and then some people were giving me like $5. I was like, "No, ma'am, it is $1 for this bottle." And they're like, "No, here, take it, keep the change." And I'm so grateful. I don't know the names of any of those people, but they changed my life. But even after I sold that first case, I went back in. I was so hungry. I went back to Publix, but I bought a styrofoam cooler. I got some ice. I added in some Gatorades. I got some more water, and now I was selling cold water and Gatorades. And I kept doing that. Made like $120 off that $20. And then for dinner, I had a McChicken and a McDouble. And that's it, man. It was $2, and that's all I needed to get going. And I felt like the spark of, I could do this. I'm gonna make it. And yeah, and then I ended up, like, one day I walked into a convenience store, and that's how I got my first deal. And long story short, I did a couple of those deals, and I ended up getting an apartment. I found a beautiful woman who I eventually married. Big mistake. Um, but she got me our biggest break. We started making very good money because of her, but she worked at the Home Depot while she was going through college. And I was able to get like polo t-shirts for like $1.50. And she was like, "Yeah, it's our uniform at work at Home Depot. We have to wear a collared shirt or a poloed shirt." So I was like, "Oh, I'll buy you a bunch of these, and then I'll embroider your name on it just to give you like a personal touch or whatever." So total cost for me was like $1.85 at the time. So we started going to work, and she was wearing these custom shirts and everything. And everyone starts asking her, like, "Oh, where are you getting these shirts from?" And she's like, "Oh, my husband or my boyfriend makes them or whatever." And Home Depot, at first, I had maybe like 12 employees buying from me. I was charging them $10 a shirt. It was like $2 cost. And I was making good money off that. But then I approached the store manager, and they had like this employee fund where all the employees like put a portion of their check in for parties and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, they thought it'd be profitable to just use that employee fund to buy these shirts and then sell it to the employees for $2 each to get more money for the employee fund. I ended up getting 3 Home Depots, and I was making, I was doing about, I would say it was close to 1,000 shirts every quarter per Home Depot. And 17 years old, I was making over 6 figures off of that. And that was just the beginning of the thirst.
Holy crap. You know what's crazy, man? It's like a lot of people give themselves every reason under the sun not to start something. And you just walked. It started by going into a convenience store, hearing a conversation, and just say, "Hey, I'll do it." Like that really was it. And boom, you blow up to over 3 Home Depots, right? I mean, that's amazing. That's remarkable, man.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that has to deal with. I had one. There's one time in my life where I realized that no wasn't going to kill me, and
Yeah.
I realized that I think I was 17. Yeah, it was probably the beginning of 17. It was my senior year, and I hadn't had a real girlfriend or anything like that. And I was like, this is the year. This is the year I'm going to do it. And I ended up asking out my best friend, and she told me no. And I was like, damn, that sucked, but that's okay. Like nothing's
Mm-hmm.
changed. And I knew that I'm gonna ask for the things that I want. And what's the
Mm-hmm.
worst that someone's gonna tell me? No,
No, well,
it
it's not going
doesn't
to kill
hurt,
you.
so
Yeah.
and I think one of the biggest things that people, especially in sales, because at the end of the day, if you're starting your own business, you're starting a sales, right? Whether you're
Yeah.
offering a
Correct.
service or something, you got to sell yourself. One of the biggest problems that people have is they're afraid to ask. They're afraid to ask to
Mm-hmm.
close the deal or to get the deal done.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't ask, you don't get it done. I see it
Mm-hmm.
now, and I'm trying to teach my guys at work because um, the way I have my store structured, they actually get paid commission. And a lot of the
Okay.
times I'll see my guys standing around the customer and like, oh, just looking. And it's like, okay, cool. What makes our store different than any other store if you're just going to ask someone something and they're like, oh, just looking? I'm selling the same stuff that everyone else is, but I want to sell the experience. And it's the customer service, it's the knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
it's the consulting that you're going to get that puts us over and beyond it. And then I'll tell people, like, watch this. I'll tell my guys, watch this. And I'll go in and I'll talk and I'll just have a conversation. You don't go in
Yeah.
aggressive. You don't do anything, but you find out like, hey, what are your interests? What do you do? Like, what do you like to? Oh, that sounds like you might like this, and then you steer them over to a product. And then once you get there, one of my favorite lines of my guys are like, I don't get how you do this, but like once I get people talking about a certain firearm or anything, and they're nodding their head, once they're psychologically nodding their head, I've got the deal done. I just have to
Yeah.
continue them nodding and saying, yeah, like I want this, I need this product,
Mm.
and then I won't ask like, oh, are you going to take this today or this or that? But I assume the sale, and I'm like, okay, all I
Mm.
need is your driver's license and your concealed weapon, if you got one, and let's get this done. And they're just like, oh, wow, I didn't even know I committed, but yeah, here you go, and they give it to me, But
That's powerful.
not being afraid of being told no. That's one of the biggest things
Mm.
that it took me to learn to be successful.
And there's something I want to point out there too that you did mention, right? I was doing a sales training recently, actually, right? And part of the discussion I was there, which I've seen in real time as well, is that when you get the person speaking about the product themselves, right, the benefits of a product or whatnot, when they say it themselves, it's like gospel, right? It's one thing when you start telling them, oh, this is good because of this and that and that. But if they start recognizing and start saying, oh, I like this because of this and that, that's like gospel to their ears. So you're already there. And then you went in and assumed the sell too, which is great, right? So no, that's awesome. I mean, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, part of my sales, I set records. So I worked for a company called Raycom, and
Okay.
and the reason I worked for them is I had the opportunity to own my own book of business, right? Like I had
Mm,
Raycom was Fox, so I worked for Fox here in West Palm Beach, and within my first 28 days, I was still training, but I set a Raycom record. I did $104,000 deal, and mind you, I got 20% of everything I put in.
oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, so I set a $104,000 deal within 28 days of being there. I was the first person to have no experience and do that. Um, and it's very simple. The way it was, the company was Critter Control. They had never been on TV. Well, they had been on TV, but it was 20 years ago.
Mm,
And basically, what I set two meetings. From the start, I set two meetings. One's a discovery meeting. I want to learn about your pain. I want to know what's going on and hear about you, right? So
mm,
I'd sit down with the GM or the owner at the time, and I was like, what are your pains? What are you trying to accomplish, right? So I'd listen to all the pains and things going on. I'd ask, like, what's your typical sale? What's the average cost? What's the margin? Blah, blah, blah. And the second meeting, it's the attack.
mm,
You're being not aggressive but confident. So
mm,
I came back with the owner. I'm like, listen, and research. You cannot, if you want to make a sale, right, to
mm.
someone, or so if you're doing business to business or business to person, you got to really understand and listen to the needs of your person, right? So
Yeah.
I sat down with him on that second trip, and I was like, Mr. Manager, you told me that your average sale is $400, right? Your net profit's like 50% or whatever because you're just paying for labor. Well, if you do your advertising with me, right, you're going to spend $104,000. You're going to reach 700,000 people per month. And if we can, like, conservatively say 10% of those people are interested, that's 70,000 people who are interested in your product, right? And then let's say 10% of those 70,000 people call you, right? So that's 7,000 people. And then say 10% of those people go ahead and convert. That's 700 people at $400. That's more than enough to cover your campaign per month. And he was just like, and the whole time, like, you're reiterating what he had told you, right? So he's nodding his head and subconsciously agreeing with you and you're gaining their trust. And, at the end of the day, or at the end of the paragraph, it was literally a contract with the numbers right there in front of him with the signature that he needs to sign on it. Mine was already on it because I assumed the deal. And he looked at me, he's like, wow, okay, let's do this. And signed.
Nice.
That was it. My manager looked at me because she came in on this meeting. And I have to give a huge shout out to Kathy Cray. She was the person who gave me the chance there. Like, I should have never had a chance working for Fox, but she just, like, kind of was looking nice and calm or whatever. And then when he signed it, she just, like, bug eyed. Like, how does this kid just do this? But yeah, like, she taught me a lot. She taught me under her wing. She was about, I want to say she was maybe 50 years old, and at the time I'm 21, and I think she's the most beautiful woman in the world. And it's not because of looks, but she reminded me of my mom. She was so professional. She always, like, dressed nice in a suit, and she just had this, like, this confidence about her that I was just like, that's the woman, man. And when I met her because I was going through college, and of course I was self-funding my college, and that took a ton of my resources. But I was working for an apartment community, just renting out apartments. And I had this one nice lady. I knew she was wealthy. She had a presidential Rolex on her wrist, so about $100,000 watch.
Money.
Yeah, so I'm renting out a son to her daughter who's going to the college right down the street from the apartment community. I worked at a luxury apartment community. And this lady had objections to Ronnie, when I tell you, like, I could tell her the sky is blue, she'd be like, no, it's purple. She just had objection after objection after objection. And I kind of, like, I find objections fun. Like, if you tell me no, I'm going to tell you every reason why you should say yes. And I'm going to make it a game. And it's fun for me. But the final objection she had was, we got into the kitchen. We're about to walk out. And she's like, ugh, this pantry is too small. And I said, ma'am, this pantry is the most efficient pantry you will ever have. I said, do you have a pantry at home? She goes, I have a massive walk-in. I said, how much food do you throw away a month? She goes, oh, a ton. And I said, do you think it's because you have too much space? Because you put too much stuff in there and you forget about it?
You don't need. Oh, man.
And I was like, your daughter's going to put her stuff right here up in the front. She has enough just for what she needs. It's just her. Right? And she was like, you know what? You're right. You're right. She goes, we're going to take this apartment. And she goes, and by the way, you need to speak to my boyfriend. And I was like, who's your boyfriend? Is he some Primerica guy? Because I had people from Primerica always offering me, like, and Mona V and all this stuff, like, oh, do you want to come work with me? You can make 6 figures, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, what is he? And she's like, oh, he's just the general manager of Fox. And I was like, okay.
Because, dude, you came at it at a great angle. I mean, as you're describing that myself, I'm like, oh, shit, yeah, you got more room than you need. You got stuff that you probably don't need and just throwing it out. I would have never really thought about that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so, and you also got to think of my mindset, too. I was divorced from Ashley, which was my first wife, and I was a single bachelor. And, like, my fridge, I had, and forgive me, I had Coors Light. Just always in my fridge, and I'd have, like, chicken and, like, a Greek yogurt or something.
Yeah.
And that was it. I just needed what I needed for the day, and I was super efficient. So that was kind of my mindset. I didn't even have a pantry. Like, I had a pantry, but I didn't see a use for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and she was, like, singing praises, called her boyfriend, told him about me. His name was John Heiselman. John, by any chance you ever hear this, thank you again for the opportunity to work with you. But he immediately called me over it was actually funny. So I decided I was going to take a vacation and go see my sister up in Georgia. And when I went up there, my sister has always been the bad version, like the bad kid, the bad child, right? And she left when she was 16 and got married. She's pretty successful now herself. Like, she's just got the grit too, you know,
Yeah.
life made her tough. Well, I went up to see my sister and she's like, oh, like, you need to just relax and like smoke a joint. And I was like, I've never done weed. I've never done anything. So I was like, you know what? Fine. It's not going to kill me, right? So I smoked my joint, and it was one of the funnest nights of my life. There's still pictures that I absolutely regret. We thought it'd be a great idea to go to Walmart and get onesies, and there's a picture of me in a
Wait.
onesie. I was in a Jack
I think that's
Skellington
that.
onesie around Walmart. It was
Oh man, man, smoking a joint will make it. I probably have a lot of pictures I don't want to find out there too.
But so that was my first experience with it. And then so the next day, I'm of course waking up or whatever, and I get a phone call, and it's John Heiselman.
Mm.
And he's like, is this Mike Perez? And I was like, it is. And he's like, you're the one my girlfriend's been talking about all day. I was like, listen, man, I'm sorry. I didn't know she had a boyfriend, like whatever. He's like, no, no, no. Like, you rented out an apartment to her daughter. I was like, oh, okay, all right. So he's like, listen, I have to sit down and interview you. Like, I have to talk to you if you're looking for an opportunity. And I was like, all right, that's cool. When do you want to meet? And he's like, how does tomorrow sound? And I was like, well, that'll be fine. So I knew I'm 21 years old. I'm never gonna get this job. Like, it's a 6-figure salary is what they were paying plus 20% commission. And so I end up driving back down to home, Palm Beach,
Mm.
and I interview. And he sits me down in his office. Everyone's making this a big deal that I'm talking to the GM himself. Like, no one talks to the GM. So I'm sitting down, we're having a great conversation, and the second I walk in his office, I notice he has a jukebox, and it said 50s, classic 50s jukebox, right? And so we sit down and talk, and he's like, what makes you think that you're good in sales? And I was like, well, I can sit here and talk about Elvis with you all day. And he's like, well, what would make you think that I'd want to talk about Elvis? So I was like, oh, the fact that when I walked in here, I noticed that he had a jukebox that had, his music on there and stuff like that. So clearly, you're not going to have something that you don't like in your office.
Yeah,
Talk about it. And I was like, I could be a chameleon. I can talk to you
that's a
about
great
that stuff.
observation.
And he was like, all right, cool. Well, that's all the questions that I have. Let me go introduce you to your new boss. And I was like, my new boss. He's like, yeah, Kathy. She has to give you the final go ahead, but I'm telling you now, I'm hiring. And I was like, okay. So I sit down in this lady's office, and she's this tiny, skinny little woman. Like I said, she's about 50 maybe at the time, or maybe 40 something. I'm a kid, so everyone looks old to me at that age, right? So I'm sitting down with her, and she's like, hi, Mike. How you doing? My name's Kathy Cray. I'm the local sales manager here for, WFLX, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I hear great things about you, but she's like, I just want to understand why a 23-year-old can walk into my office and think he can provide some sort of benefit to me and my company. And I was just like, wow, like right off the bat, like she's just going in. I was like, well, I'm
Like
exactly
hammering
what.
in.
Yeah, it was rough,
Yeah.
but like me, man, again, everything's a challenge. I got an objection, so here we go. Like, we're playing chess, verbal chess. And I was like, well, I'm exactly what Fox is looking for. And she's like, oh, how so? You have no experience. You bring nothing to the table. I said, I come with no experience and an open mind. I said, I'm going to be moldable. I'm going to be exactly what you want me to be. You tell me what you need done. I'm going to get it done. I'm 23 years, or I was 21 or 23. I'm 21 years old. I'm going to do exactly what you want. You train me the right way. I'm going to do it the right way. And I said, I'm young, I'm edgy, and that's exactly what Fox stood for when they came out with The Simpsons. A cartoon that no one thought would ever be successful because it was too raunchy and too edgy. That's me. Do you want me, or do you want someone else who's going to have their own preconception on how things are supposed to be done? She goes, wow. Slides over the contract for my pay and everything. And she's like, you're going to go far, kid. And I did. I think that year I probably not took home, but I grossed probably about $250,000 that year.
Oh wow.
That's when I learned taxes suck.
And that, yeah, oh yeah. Well, no. You know what though? That's considering that you played Texas and Florida. And imagine making that much up north.
Oh.
That, yeah, forget about it. But even outside of that, man, it's just that's a story, man. That's awesome. That truly is powerful.
And then just having her, like, I would go in on her meetings, and
Yeah.
she never, no one could tell her no. No one could tell her no. Like, she was just so good at telling you, like, you told me this, therefore, we're going to do this because it's going to augment that or whatever. Like, she was just so good, but she gave me, like, without that experience working at Fox, I probably wouldn't have been as good as I am with sales, and most of my life has been based around sales.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a good experience, and then that's when I started up a lot of ventures, like legal ventures, actually setting it up on Sunbiz, which is our local Florida thing to set up businesses, and going from there. And I've set up, like I said, probably about 12 businesses, and all but 3 have failed.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people now,
yeah.
like I tell people now, when they ask like what I do initially, I'm like, I'm a professional failure. I've failed a million ways. I've failed so many times, but now I can tell you 1,000,001 ways not to fail.
I mean, now that you have 2 brands that, in my opinion, they're fucking dope, man. So let me ask you. All right, so the backstory alone that you shared, just that alone has me ready to just hit the ground and keep on working, right? Because there's so much motivation, there's so much inspiration there, right? And there's so many things that you had said that lessons 1 in sales, like assume the sell. When people were speaking, in the product sell, that's like saying gospel. And it's good things people need to know. One thing I want to ask, actually, before I get into the next topic of your current ventures, is this, right? So you shared the challenges of leaving home, living in your car for 2 months, was it, right? Before getting into this thing, right? Now you mentioned how, like, now you're like, call your mom, thank you for everything you've done because I am the person I am, right? And I'm crafting this question because I love these kind of podcasts. I could show you, I have a list of questions. I'm trashing all my questions because this has gone in a way where it's like, whoa, I need to pick this instead. What was the mindset you had when let's take yourself back to those 2 months in that car, right? And you shared some of that mindset, but if we could dive a little deeper into what was to that mindset that was there, like what were you feeling, and then what did you do? Like, was there any core things that you put yourself through in that moment to get yourself out of that mindset to continue on forward? Because I know plenty of people in situations like that, and they ended up in worse places,
So
but you did it.
that's a very good question. So the first couple days, and I did nothing. First couple days, it was fear, and it was like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like day 3 of like, that's not bad. I'm not dead. So what am I really afraid of? Like, I'm at bottom. There's only one place to go, and that's up.
Yeah.
And man, just every day knowing. So I'm not overly religious, but I do believe in God, and I do believe now more so after all my failures and things that have happened. I do believe now more than ever that we have to just let go and let God, because just do the right things and keep going forward and working in God's name, and good things are going to happen, So every day I knew that if I made sales, if I did something for that day, I moved forward. And I knew that as long as I was moving forward, I wasn't going to stay where I was, that my pain was temporary and my success was guaranteed. And it was just move forward, man. Don't even look back. There's times where, like, I'm going through major stuff right now. I had over $100,000 stolen from me from
Oh, wow.
best friend of mine, and I could sit back and be salty about it, or I could just realize, like, you know what, I'm dealing with that pain now, but it isn't permanent. It's temporary. You just move forward. You take that loss. You take it as an L. You take it as and an L doesn't mean a loss. An L means a lesson. Like, you're always moving forward. You don't look back, because what's done is done, and it's all about making that audible. What do I do next? How do I continue on this play? How do I get mission success? Just move forward. As long as you're moving forward, you're going to get results.
Wow. Man, I feel like this right here is there's gonna be a lot of cut up scenes. You know, you ever watch? Do you watch any podcast?
I don't watch, but I
Okay,
listen to Joe Rogan.
Joe
Like
Rogan's the
I
man.
love Joe Rogan. I got my entire family right now is on smelling salts. Like we wake up in the morning, everyone's like,
That's all I heard.
I mean, I'm
Oh
about to buy
man.
that cold plunge thing because like Joe Rogan's the man, and
Oh, dude, I saw. You know, well, even before I even get to what I was gonna say, aligned with what you just said. I'm listening to these points that you're driving in, and I'm just like, man, if every young person or every person who's going through something right now was just to grab onto those lessons there, you'll make it a lot further. I was telling someone, so you know, I had a recent change myself, like past 3 weeks ago, that put me and my family in a situation that's not a great situation, right? Fortunately, I've always been I've been someone who's become very forward thinking, so I've thought ahead and prepared for any kind of situation. So we've been great. But in those moments, so I had some of these conversations with multiple people, and like, yo, if this was going on in my life, I would be freaking out. And I sat there, my response was simple: it's like, look, if I sit there depressed, I sit there angry, I sit there mad, I sit there concerned for whoever else is hurting around me right now, it's going to be expensive. It's going to be very expensive because it just gets you nowhere, right? You just got to, things happen. It's just life. Life happens. You got to acknowledge that's going to be there. The pain is going to be there, but you got to do something in order to fix that, right? Especially if you got a family, you got a purpose to fight. So these lessons I hear, I'm like, man, this is crazy because that's exactly what I'm telling people. Hold yourself in a regard where, if you're sad, you're depressed. I mean, it's okay to feel. I'm not telling anyone not to feel, but what's not okay is to stay there. Because staying there is just what's ultimately going to cost you and those who depend on you and love you the most, right? So that's just a whole ordeal there, man. And thanks for sharing that, man. I'm telling you, right now, I'm like, whoa, like I'm feeling my blood pumping. I feel great, and I'm like, I know people who listen to this need to listen to this because this is pure fucking gold, right? Especially coming in a situation where I can't imagine. Like I've heard stories of other people who have similar situations with less or even more money, where it's like a best friend or a family member turns their back and takes money, right? As a matter of fact, I don't know if you know who Alex Hormozy is. Um, look him up, man. He's great. He creates, to me right now, I think he creates the best business content and all of social media because these are all stuff that like any company, if it's not implementing, they should implement. Just check him out. And he had a similar situation where he had a business more in the gym industry, fitness industry, where a part of his left him with like a few bucks, took hundreds of thousands of dollars. And when I was reading that, I sat there, I'm like, man, I've encountered friendships where people have done, stuff is like, dude, seriously, but never to a degree that far. And honestly, I don't know how I would react because when I give myself to somebody in the sense of like, yo, I consider your family, I consider your family. So if a moment of betrayal like that happens to me, it's like, yo, that's
it's
painful.
bad.
Yeah.
It's bad, but
Yeah.
in my case, I have 12 little eyes watching what Dad does and
Mm.
learning how to
Wow.
react to adversity.
That's the
And
biggest part.
if I let them see Dad can get beat, Dad can get hit, but Dad's not going to get knocked down. And if he does, he's going to get back up. He's going to face what he has to face and just keep moving forward.
That's powerful, dude. Like this year, I got in a new car, and somebody stole our catalytic converter.
Oh God, that's
Yeah,
huge.
dude, and man, it was, and so we got the car. Within the first week of getting the car, somebody crashed into the side of a car, and then the week we were going to take it to the mechanic to get repaired, somebody stole our catalytic. It was like $12,000 worth of repairs. Fortunately, we didn't have to pay. So yeah, no. So when I came out the car, you know how Miami is, man. I feel like Miami people, we all have tempers,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And I've never lost that, and I've had like explosive temper. So I said, when I found out I turned on my car. The noise was loud. Whoa, blah, 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 blah. Like first thing that came to mind, I didn't even have to look under my car. I'm like, these motherfuckers did not just rob me. So I got on my car, got on my hands, went down, looked under, pipe was all gone. I got up, but my explosion, my two kids and my wife were dead. I exploded. I wanted to cause all kinds of violence towards the people that did that, right? Because I was already angry with other stuff. And I looked at that and I went home and had so much regret of how I reacted because they all saw me freak up, like pissed off. And my wife hadn't seen me that mad at all. So a guy from church had called me, and I told him, like, "Look, man, I really want to hurt some people right now. There's a lot of stuff going on aside from my car too." He was like, "Remember, your kids are watching." All you have to say is your kids and your wife is watching. When he said that, and it goes to what you just said, 12 eyes watching. I'm like, well, I got 6 eyes watching me right now. If I count in my puppy, that's we're talking 8 eyes, right? And I don't want them to react like this. I don't. If situations like this happens, I want them to react the best way possible. But I can't expect that if I don't do it myself, right? So that's even myself. I started changing that mentality. It's like, okay, I picked up on a word called stoicism, right? So I'm still learning more about it, and I love
Always
it
be
because it's like
stoic.
really, yeah, exactly. It's like I've never heard that word till recently, and I'm like, man, that's powerful, and that's what I want to be for my children, right? So yeah, man, you shared that. I'm like, oof, it hit home.
Yeah, man. I mean, I I grew up without a father.
Mm-hmm.
And I held a grudge against my dad up until 2000 and what was it? 2 years ago, 2021, when I talked to him for what I thought was the second time. It was actually the first time. I had someone call me pretending to be my dad and asking for
Mm-hmm.
money because I was always just money to people. And so I talked to my mom about it. Again, we had a really good relationship. I saved her life, and that brought us way closer.
Wow.
I don't know if you know about that story of my shooting. Um,
Oh no, I didn't even know you were in the shooting. Oh wow.
yeah, October 3rd, 2018. My stepfather thought that was going to be the day that it would be a good day for him to kill my mom and then kill himself.
Oh
Suicide by
wow.
cop. He actually even wrote about it in a book called Into the Darkness or something like that. And my mom was with her best friend at the time. They just come from a casino. And long story short, my stepdad had found out that he has 2 kids with a stripper from like years ago, and she came after him for child support. He was a successful trade compliance guy for a national company, and he ended up going to court. He was making about 250,000 a year. My mom was making about 150 or something. They were getting paid good, living in Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
but in Georgia, so he went to court and they did the paternity test and all that stuff, and it was determined that they were his kids and that he had to pay child support. So the judge had ordered that he paid $35,000 or something like right then and there. And he's like, "Well,
Jesus.
I don't have that money." And he's like, "Well, why not? You make $250,000 a year. You make that in a month." And he's like, "Yeah, but I spend it. I'm irresponsible. I'm like every American. I spend it." And he's like, "Well, the only thing you're going to be spending is time in jail." And he threw him in jail.
Wow.
And of course, in Georgia, I guess not paying child support is like a felony. So he lost his job and everything. They started losing their cars, their home, everything, like everything.
Fuck, dude, that's rough. Yeah.
So I told my mom, I said, "Hey, don't worry. I'm gonna get you guys a place. You're gonna come down here. I'll float you for a year. I'll pay for your apartment. I'll pay for your deposit. I'll pay for your move and everything. Like, don't worry. This is not the end. Like, you're gonna get out of this. You're going through some trouble and things happen, but you got to keep moving forward. As with my life, you just got to keep moving."
Yeah.
So moved them down. Um, Developed a really good relationship with my stepdad. I mean, for 5 years we had a good relationship, but we were fishing every day. We were hanging out every day. He was like one of my best friends.
Mm-hmm.
And but I guess him being a very Hispanic man, watching my mom pay for everything because he couldn't get a job. Oh, to add
Oh, that
insult
probably
to
crushed
injury,
him.
yeah, I had insult to injury. I got him a job through a friend, like just getting him a job to get him on his feet and get him going. But he's a felon. He got a job for 13 an hour, and he had like a another court date to go back in Georgia. So he goes back to Georgia to show like he's got a job, he's working at paying the child support or whatever. The judge throws him back in jail. Says you got that $13 an hour job to lower child support. You're making a mockery of my court. Threw him in jail. So that was the
Jesus Christ,
moment.
what was wrong with that court system, man? That's crazy.
Georgia's very like pro female, like you got to pay the child support. But so he
That's
came back. They were dealing with all the legal bills and everything, the lawyers,
yeah.
and so he finally had enough. And what I didn't know is after the shooting, my mom was in on it. My mom planned on dying that night. I didn't know about it. Like they had discussed that it was going to happen. She didn't know it was that night. her best friend was over, and they had just came over to my house after the gambling at Mikasuki, the local place. They did good, and it was like 10:30 at night, and so I asked my mom. I said, "Hey, where's Alvaro? Where's my stepdad?" And she's like, "Oh, he's at home." I was like, "All right, cool. Let me text him, see if he wants to come over. I'll make him drinks too." So I text him, and he just texts me back. I'm just a piece of shit with child support issues. Like, I'm good here. So I told her, I was like, he's in a bad mood. I guess you should go hang out with him or whatever. We'll call it a night. So her and her best friend leave, and about 15 minutes later, her friend comes banging on the door, and I moved them literally 20 seconds away
Mm.
from me. I had an apartment
Yeah.
right next to me, and about 15 minutes later, her friend's banging on my door, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And she's like, she's just like choking up on words, crying. I'm like, "Speak now, tell me what's going on." Like, I had to be very assertive, and she's like, "He has a gun. He loaded it up, and he said he's gonna kill your mom and blow his brains out." So I told her, "Stay here, call 911, don't come, no matter what you hear." And luckily, I was teaching a concealed weapon class the next day, so I had all my guns like ready and packed.
Yeah.
And the first thing I saw was my AR-15, and I grabbed that, just grabbed the magazine, loaded it up, ran across, and I figured like I'm just gonna be the guy with the bigger gun, and didn't think I'd have to shoot him. That he would just be like, "Oh, I'm outgunned here," and then just drop
Yeah.
the gun. And as I get over there, I hear commotion as I get up to the top of my mom's stairs, and the door slightly open from her friend escaping. And I look through the crack, and I see him, and he's this 250 pound, solid muscle, 6'4" dude. And I hear him yell, "Oh God, please forgive me!" And his hands, he raises his hands up, and in his left hand, I see something black. And I open the door, and he points it forward, and I see my mom just like lean forward into the gun, and I realized it's a gun. And at that point, it was just, I wasn't there anymore. It's sucked out of
Oh
my
yeah.
body. Training happened, and I shot him once, and he turned his body to me. The gun pointed at me, and I thought, "Oh my God, I just missed. Now I'm gonna die." And I pulled the trigger what I thought was one more time, and I actually shot him 5 more times. And that's when one of the biggest troubles with my life began, and where I developed PTSD. But I ended up killing him. One of the
Wow.
men that I looked up to and you know really admired, and I
Yeah.
was the person that took his life. And it. I still deal with it today.
Yeah. Yeah. That's tough. Yeah. Yeah. I
But
can't. I can't imagine the weight of that, man. I really can't. That's a tough situation to be in.
yeah, and I haven't really talked to many people about it. I do talk about it a little bit when I teach people about firearm safety. I talk about the realness, because I tell people like the only thing that got me out alive. And again, I think we have choices in life, and I bring this
Mm.
up because I had two choices. So that morning after the shooting, I had to go back to my mom's home to get her clothes because she didn't want to go back there. And I called up my doctor, and I told him what happened. He's like, "I'm prescribing you Xanax." And I told my best friend at the time what happened. He's like, "I got just the right thing for you. I'm coming over." And he came over with a handle of Jack and a 24 pack of Bud Light. And I remember I was popping Xanax and drinking. And the first 2 days after the shooting, I didn't remember anything. But I woke up the third day with the worst headache of my life, and I knew I'm at a crossroads. I either keep doing this and die, or I get help, and I move past this, and I have a son that I need to move forward with.
Hmm.
I need to show him
Yeah.
that I could still be dad. And I picked up the phone, and I called one of my buddies who I knew was seeing a therapist, and I was like, "Hey, what's your therapist's number?" And for a year and a half, 2 times a week, I was seeing my therapist, and I ended up calling him like Abuelo Abuso. He was like my grandpa, and man, he saved my life. He saved my life and
Yeah.
kept me moving forward. Um, but yeah, it was tough, tough times, and it brought me and my mom a lot closer, because my mom never wanted guns or anything in her life when I was a kid. And of course, here we are. I was obsessed with them and training, and she was like, thank God you were there that second, and thank God you trained." But
Yeah.
that was one of the reasons that led into We Kick Brass. Like I wanted to start a company. Well, we started the company for two reasons. We started back in May of 2020.
Mm.
Our son was fighting cancer.
Oh wow.
My wife and I, he had LCH, Langerhans cystitis, I believe. Babe, if you hear this, you can correct me. And he was doing chemo called vinblastine. So he had no immune system, and COVID had just happened. And the job that I was working for at the time, they're like, listen, and again, it was like a lot of the jobs I worked for is like you own your own book of business. So it's like
Hmm.
technically owning your own business. And they're like, you have to be forward facing, or we're gonna have to let you go. And I was like, listen, I'm not putting my kid's life in jeopardy. I'm not gonna kill my kid because of this disease. We didn't know what COVID was, so I stopped. And my wife, they laid me off. And my wife was like, you've been working hard since you were 17 years old. You've never taken a day off. She's like, take a couple months. And at that time, I watched my first son. So I have five boys and one girl. Three of my kids are stepkids, but they're my kids. You
Yeah.
know, I had one biological kid before getting into my marriage, and I didn't get to really see my son born and spend time with him because I was always working. And then I saw Logan. I saw Logan born, and I got to spend the first 2 months of his life, and that was game changer. And what I'm about to say is like this is one of the keys. You want to be successful. I know it sounds stupid, but you do what you love. But you never ever ever work so much that you miss family.
Hmm.
Do
Wow.
not fall in love with the money. Do not fall in love with the success. Fall in love with providing by doing what you love and being a role model for your family. Like I
Yeah.
get to spend. I'm here. It's Monday. My store is operational. We're doing ridiculously well right now. Obviously, I'm grateful that I'm spending time with you here, but I got all my kids here, and I'm gonna play with them all day.
That's
And
amazing, dude. That's
that's
amazing.
that's success in my eyes.
No, 100%, 100%. Man, let me tell you something. So, again, I'm going on my third week as I'm pushing on my own ventures now, right? And it's challenging. We all know this world is difficult, comes with a lot of challenges, and it can keep you very very busy all day if it had to, right? But I told myself that exact is like, if this becomes something where I'm not with my kids, not spending time and taking care of, because if home is not okay, man, then nothing else is going to be okay, right? Because I'm not going to be functional doing the stuff I need to be doing because I know home is not okay, right? So it's so important, and I think that you just by sharing that, it's not, I know you earlier said, this might sound corny. I don't think, or I forget which word to use, but I don't think it does. I think it's very smart. I think it's very important because people need to understand. It's like, yo, you have to work hard towards stuff. You're passionate. And I get it. You want to focus all your time because you love to do what you're doing. But again, if your home is not okay, ultimately you're not going to be okay because that's going to bring problems, right? So that's
100%.
that's powerful, man. That's very very powerful. Now,
Yeah, it took a lot of hard lessons to get to that point to understand that. Like my
yeah,
wife, man, she's so patient. She's honestly, you may want to have her on here because she's gone through some she's gone through the ringer. But no matter what, she has the same characteristics, and I think that's what makes us successful. Is like no matter what you throw at us, it's not like, oh, how am I going to get over this? It's like, okay, what's the next step to get over this?
yeah,
How do we plow through this? How do we just move on through? And there's sometimes where it's like, fuck, this is
mm,
hard, but we stop for the second and we hold each other and we're just like, fuck it, we got us. No matter what, like if we fail, and I think you may have seen this on my Facebook, but like if we fail, it doesn't matter. Like
yeah,
we jumped into the arena knowing we're going to get our asses beat because like when you decide to go in business for yourself, you're going make no mistakes, you're going to get your ass beat day in, day out. You just better say
mm,
thank you world. Thank you for making me stronger. But you just got to you got to fight for every single day, no matter what. There's always going to be a roadblock. There's always something that's going to punch you in the face. And you just
mm,
have to get up, say thank you, and keep moving forward. Because the second you say, this is too much for me, you were that close to success. Failure is just on the other side of success, you know? You're going to fail. Do not be afraid of it. Just keep pushing forward. Just fucking persevere. That's it.
Listeners, if you're listening to this, you could get his book at. Dude, I know I'm not. I joke. I'm lightly joking about that, but I'm being serious too. Because my wife always jokes around with me, telling me, "Hey, you should write a book about your past with everything that's happened." Right? It's like I just don't feel like it's the time yet. But I'm hearing your story, and I'm like, man, for someone like yourself, it might be the time. Because, dude, look, we're recording 1 hour in, right? And I have to get onto this other session, but we're recording 1 hour, and every single minute, every single second of this by far has become my favorite episode, right? Every single second here was just a person. This was like a lesson that I'm like, that I've learned and that I'm, working on even current in this current situation. And I know the people that I'm shooting these messages to are people who want to overcome their current circumstances. I mean, you went from circumstances that were not pretty at all. If you've went through challenges along the way to the place that you're at now, not saying where you're at now is beautiful, but you got your dream cars, you got a beautiful home, you got a beautiful family, you're doing what you love. It's pretty darn successful, right? You're doing what you're doing amazing. And a lot of people get stuck from just getting started or just because their circumstances are so difficult that they allow that to be a barrier between where they're now to their dreams. But you've shown in this podcast alone, not only that it can be broken, but how you broke it. And I'm hoping that the people who are listening could really understand that, grab that, and utilize that for themselves to break out of those challenges. Because your circumstances, they mold you to become the person you're going to be later. And there's two routes. You can either be a person who goes down a rabbit hole of shit, as she said, or a person who's going to go and break those barriers and reach their goals. I mean, I got chills, Mike.
Well, look, man, when my wife and I started We Kick Brass, we were living in a roach infested apartment. This is no shit. We were like there was roaches everywhere. But it was all we could afford. And our first month in business, we made $7,000 gross. Okay. And the next month we did 14,000, and then the next month we did 20, and then 25, and then 181,000 in a month. It gets better. You just gotta fucking fight for every inch. Like, there was a YouTube video when I was younger that really, really motivated me. And it just says, you cannot be successful until you want success more than you want to breathe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And let me tell you this, my first $1 million that I've ever made took 10 years to make.
Mm-hmm.
My second $1 million took 6 months. Okay. You want to be a millionaire, you want to be rich, you want to be successful. That's not rich, but you want to be successful, you got to put in the work. It takes time. There's no, oh, this is Mr. Beast here, blah, 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 blah. Like, no, there's no life hack, no trick, no, unless you're oddly intelligent to the point of like geniusness, or oddly lucky that you're going to come up with something that's going to revolutionize. You're not going to make millions overnight. It's going to take time. But once you do it, you've failed so many times. You know all the right moves to keep moving forward and making more. But now after making the millions, it doesn't even matter. The wife and I, we brought in about 3.1 million last year. But now it's not about the money. And some people are like, oh, well, you probably had the money, so you get to enjoy it, blah, 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 and all this stuff. No, we had to actually reinvest all that into our store this year and deal with all the stuff that happened, which I won't get into. But at the end of the day, after reaching the top of where I wanted to be and getting to that goal, the most happier success that I feel now is I get to spend time with my family. And not only that, but I started We Kick Grass, and this is the actual backstory of We Kick Grass. I started it because I had a salesperson who was a young kid, wasn't very good with sales. He just wasn't very personable, but the kid had freaking drive, and I saw it in him, and I knew that he's worth something. So I went out and I bought $50,000 worth of equipment. I got a tractor with a mower, I got a zero turn, all the 2-stroke engines, trailers, truck, everything, right? And I told him, I said, this is yours.
Oh, wow.
This is yours. I own 50% of the company. You put in the work. You build this up, I will market it. This is yours. Because once you've reached what you feel is success, don't forget where you started from. Turn back around and see if you can help someone, if you can identify someone that needs the help. There may have been a 17-year-old me that was homeless and stuck and had the drive. If someone would have helped me out early on, who knows what I could have become.
Yeah.
Now I know that I can change someone's life. I know that I can do that for someone. So I'm 50% owner of We Kick Grass, and I have a young kid who's taking it over, and he's taking it in stride, and he's being successful. But I'm instilling that
That's
into him.
amazing. That's amazing. The opportunity you're giving this individual, and it's crazy because you came from a place where you've worked your ass off to get there, and you see somebody else who has the work ethic, and it's not like you just gave them money or stuff. Is no, you gave them something to make something out of it, right?
Yep.
Which is huge because in long term that's going to teach that kid so much more, right?
Yep.
So that's amazing. That's chills.
Listen, once you've reached and success is 100% like the eye of the beholder. It's what
Yeah.
you make of it. Okay, like I'm successful now. I'm not making millions anymore. I have employees. I have a lot of overhead and things like that. But I get to spend time with my wife. I get to spend time with my kids. I get to help build up someone, and watching someone else be successful, like, dude, that's a feeling, man. That's a good feeling, and it's giving almost feels as good as receiving. That's what she
Mhm.
said. But yeah, it,
I
it
just got that.
truly is a good feeling to help someone, and
Buzz.
anyone want to reach out to me and ask for guidance or anything, like, dude, I'm always there. I've had so many people reach out to me in the gun community, like, I can't break through, I can't make my store successful, like, what are you doing, how can you help? And it's just, I'm always here if anyone ever needs help. Like, that's just who I am. I get just as much feeling a success, doing that.
That's amazing. Well, guys, I have to wrap this up now because I do have to get no to, and I'm a little afraid, man. Mike, I would love at some point to get you back on again. I feel like I feel like I have so many more questions I want to ask you. That it's like, dude, right now, just alone, I can't even say what I want to say because I don't know how to articulate it because I'm just like inspired myself, right? Which is awesome. Like throughout the podcast, I'm like, I'm just listening. I'm not even wanting to talk, and then I want to say something. Let me listen more. And that's because there's so much value that you just delivered here to the listener. So one, absolutely thank you for that because this could change lives, and I really want to push this out for people to grasp on this because I think these are pivotal things, right? But in the meantime, man, as we wrap this up here, I want to ask two things. One, I want to just leave you. Where can people find you? Like, what's the product?
So our company is We Kick Brass. We're a premier gun store in West Palm Beach, Florida. You can check us out if you want to support us online, wekickbrass.com. That's WEKICKBRASS.com.
Check him out. Buy their shirt. He has a shirt on right now. I saw the logo on the shirt earlier.
Yeah. Actually,
So,
whenever you buy a We Kick Brass shirt, we donate $5 to that to a couple cancer societies that helped us out with our son.
oh, ma, I didn't even know that. Let's see. Okay, so you know what? I'm gonna put the link to that on the description of the podcast itself because that'll be that's awesome. That's awesome.
I'll send that over to you.
All right, awesome. And then the second thing, right? So I want to do like a quick 2-minute crunch, right? And you touched up on so much already. I'm here like, how dare I ask for one more piece of value here, right? So I want you to think about. Let's think about this. Let's think about the young 20-year-old kid or man, right? Who's who didn't have the father figure, who's struggling at home, probably still lives at home, and it struggles financially, but wants to, and has a lot of circles in it, but wants to start their own business, right? They want to start their own business. They want to become their own boss ultimately so they can have the freedom to have a family and be there for their family, right? What is one thing? I mean, you already discussed so many. I don't even know if there could be more. And if you do, oh my gosh. But if you could think about just that one thing you feel like is the most important thing that individuals should know, what would that be?
Identify what your dream is and never stop chasing it until it's your reality. Never give up. That's it, man. That's it. Find out what your dream is. My dream was to be in the gun industry and owning my own business. And I fought every day through roach infested apartments, through banks freezing my accounts, from banks refusing to do business with me. Just keep moving on, because you know what? I live in my dream.
Dude, that's gonna be a social media clip right there. So, I mean, this episode alone, I feel like I got like 5, 10 easy clips I'm gonna post on there, which I'll share with you then. But I'm gonna close this out here, and then before anything, so if you don't just stay on the call, I'm just gonna stop the recording. So guys, thank you for following. I appreciate it. Hit subscribe, check them out, buy a T-shirt. It's going to a cause, not only just having a dope shirt. So that's even more reason to buy one. And thank you.